Sure.
Well, first,
Good to see all of you. Thanks and welcome. Wow. All over the world, Germany, Australia, England, all over the US and Canada. Wonderful. So great. And all the kits look really great. The outfits look fantastic. The uniforms, the equipment. It's humbling, it's gratifying. Really neat.
So Dan, last night during the screening, you mentioned the work of your great-grandfather, Dr. Sam Ackroyd. And so that harkens back to the spiritualist era, mediumship, seances, and I believe it was your father that would peek into some of these seances. Is that accurate?
Yeah, my dad wrote a book, History of Ghosts. I think you can still get it on Amazon. Lowdale is supposed to digitally release it, but I believe there are copies left on Amazon, and many of you I know have ordered it and read about it. Yeah, you know. Your podcast is quite popular, and you probably have treated it before. Yeah. What happened was, like, in the 1800s, like between the 1840 and the turn of the century, a lot of religions had been at work in America. You had Protestantism, you had Catholicism in Maryland, you had Mormonism work its way across, and kind of, people were a little burned out in the Bible Belt of upstate New York with conventional religion, and they were looking for something new, something to believe in beyond just the dogma of a conventional religious stricture. So things started to happen up there where they were more open-minded about perhaps, that there's something beyond life, and consciousness can survive and life can survive. And the Fox sisters in Hydesville, New York, had a little home there, and things started to happen, rappings, knockings, and the sisters began to respond to them, and the knockings would respond back to them, and they excavated in the basement after some time, after this went on, and found a body there, skeletal remains, of someone they figured was a salesman who'd been killed by one of the owners of the cabin. And they called him Mr. Splitfoot, and in fact, they toured with him and did stuff in arenas all over the world. And you can go on your search engine and look up the headlines. Fox Sisters in France, Fox Sisters, you see them touring as stars around the world. Now, at the end of their lives, Margaret Fox said a lot of it was faking, and she was using her foot, because sometimes they lose their powers. But I think a lot of the Fox Sisters' occurrences were quite genuine. So from that just triggered a whole community up there in Lilydale, New York, of people who believe in mediumship and believe in the afterlife and the survival of consciousness after death. And yeah.
I'm from Lilydale.
And you are the forward.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you gifted or
no?
No. But you can go to your neighbors and get a reading. Yeah.
That's great.
No, it's great. It's in Chautauqua, New York. It's a beautiful part of the world. The lake there and everything. A wonderful, experience. If you want to go to the best mediums in the world in the summer, they all gather there, and you go to their cottages and pay, and they all have a registration number, and they're all very, very gifted. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you wrote the foreword to that book, correct?
I did, yes, yeah. My dad did all the research, and it was because we found my great-grandfather's journals. He was the reviewer in town of anybody who was coming through that claimed to have a psychic gift, a medium, a levitator, a precipitated painter, and he would say, "No, that's a fake, that's a hoax. Oh, there could be something real here," and he'd write it up. And he wrote it up in his journal, so we found his little scribblers down in the damn trunks full, and that's what my dad based the book on. And indeed, it was his work that brought the psychic journals and the research journals into our house very early. He was into it. My grandfather was a Bell telephone engineer. He was into it. My dad was a road engineer, a civil engineer. So they dealt in numbers and tangents and angles and joules and gigajoules and megawatts. They were men of science, and they saw that there was something beyond the physical world, in the invisible world we can't explain, and wanted to make inquiry. And that's why we're all here today, because my great-grandfather Sam, thank you, Sam Ackroyd. Yeah.
And you mentioned the book and the journaling and such, and also in the foreword, you mentioned how the legacy of the family creates like a long shadow, and it passes down through generations. But towards the end of the shadow, it starts to sort of fade away. So does this interest in the paranormal, in your family, in the Ackroyds, does it stop with you? Or your kids, have they picked up the ball as well?
Well, I don't think they're going to go into it professionally. They're not going to start a ghost hunting society, but certainly they're interested and will make inquiry, but they're on other career ideas and career paths. For a while there, we'd take pictures of Stella, our youngest child, and there were little globs of light we couldn't explain in there. Orbs, the orb phenomenon is quite spectacular what's going on there. You have Polaroids and you have digital photos with globs of light around war memorials and hospitals and stuff, and the Travel Entertainment Channel really treats hauntings well, and they talk about the orbs. And those are spirits just kind of poke through trying to contact us, and they're appealing. They want to be with us again.
So with spirit communication, especially within a family or people that are very close one way or another.
Well, twins are telepathic. Many twins are telepathic. We know this, yeah.
Which was my question going to be to you. Do you believe that any of this information that started with your grandfather may have been transmitted to you telepathically?
I don't think so, no. It was mainly just all the publications were there. He was subscribed to the American Society for Psychical Research journals. We knew about his stories, and my dad talked about the seances, and so that tradition was passed down. The seances continued well into the late 40s, and we had our own medium, Walter Ashurst. He was a locomotive mechanic. He walked up to my great-grandfather one day and said, "I think I have a gift." He became the family medium, and every Sunday these big black Dodges and Packards and Cadillacs would roll into the farmhouse, and the women would come out, matrons, dressed like Margaret Dumont, and the husbands, and they'd roll in there, and my great-grandfather would sit, and he was the impresario, and it was a show for 90 minutes, an hour and a half seance, and Walter would go into full, open, gaping mouth trances. He would transform his body. If he was channeling someone that was completely foreign, he'd speak in foreign tongues, and he was very effective. And so it was mainly that. It was the seances. It was the books that we were reading all the time, the Fate magazine, and just that, here I am, my grandfather talking about it, my father talking about it, of course I'm going to read. So the belief was passed down that way, just from orally and also hearing stories. My mother was nursing me at 1 year old in the farmhouse. No, I was like 1 month old. And she kind of woke up out of a sleep and then looked up, and there were 2 people standing at the edge of the bed, and she cried out to my father, and the images vanished, and she described him to my father, and he said, "Oh, that's Dr. Sam Ackroyd and his wife, Ellen Jane Wemp. I mean, that's, they're coming to welcome the child." And he showed her a picture in one of the family journals, so she said, "That's them, yeah." And my mother was, she was not made to be a believer. She was a pretty tough French-Canadian Catholic skeptic, so.